Next up, House File 2791, Representative Purcell. Land, water quality, aquatic life, and wildlife protected. Representative Purcell, would you like to move that House File 2791 be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
And Representative Purcell, I believe you have a DE4 authors amendment. Would you like to move your amendment and explain it briefly?
Yes, that is my motion, Mr. Chair. The DE4 clarifies the original intent of the bill and is a good faith attempt by the proponents to make some updates after getting feedback speaking with stakeholders.
Representative Purcell moves the DE4 amendment to get the bill in the form the author would like. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion prevails. The DE4 amendment is adopted. Representative Purcell to the bill as amended.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I present House File 2791 before the committee, and I'm proud to be a voice for many grassroots groups who support the legislation before you in order for Minnesota to be more intentional around our off-road vehicle spaces in our state. You'll see from the there's about a 40-page handout. There's a section in there with some colored images that is helpful from my partners in this work. Changes are happening in our environment, both human-caused and climate-induced, which are greatly impacting our outdoor culture and resources. According to the DNR from its website, many of our lakes and streams are designated as impaired bodies of water, as on page 4 of this handout. The impaired waters are the lower picture. These might be due to sedimentation and siltation, and a number of species are endangered due to habitat loss and degradation. Habitat degradation is a predominant factor in 70% of our species in greatest conservation need. We must do our part to find a better balance between how we recreate outdoors and protecting our priceless water, wildlife, and habitat. In that spirit, House File 2791 is a proposal to build better trail management practices going forward as a way to better protect our lakes, streams, wildlife, and habitat on public lands, and also better coordinates our extensive ongoing trail building across the state. The sport of motorized recreation has had a 143% increase in users since 2005, and the machines have evolved from 400 pounds to 2,000 pounds, with a significant increase in horsepower and trail impact potential, which is why we feel it's past due to have this conversation at the legislature. As amended, this bill does 4 things. 1, makes state law consistent and fair throughout the state with access to designated and posted trail signs. This not only helps users know where to ride, but it reduces illegal trails from being made. 2, buffer zones, which codify DNR and U.S. Forest Service guidelines for water protection and avoiding the MPCA's currently listed 49 water bodies that are ranked exceptional use. These are the waters in that top part of the map. You can see they are mostly located in the northeast corner of Minnesota, where I too have lived and regularly recreate. Around in this Arrowhead area, these are our only remaining pristine streams, reaches, and lakes in the state. The third thing that this particular legislation does is implement the 2003 legislative audit recommendation requiring environmental assessment worksheets for future trail development for all off-highway vehicle projects. We just heard in the previous bill, projects have gone through this EAW process. Making sure that projects go through that process fosters public transparency, reduces lawsuits, and possible federal interference. And fourth and finally, tribal and local approval early in the planning process of all off-highway vehicles projects. This levels the playing field for our local units of government and promotes resolution among local entities. And just to note, our intention when we created this bill is that the funding would come from the DNR's ATV account. The DNR's 2022 ATV Master Plan Survey expressed the need for additional improvements, which this bill addresses. The DNR itself said improvements of marked routes greatly reduces off-trail riding, prioritizes trail maintenance needs to include invasive species removal and mitigation, and examines hydrological impact. Dealerships said trails need more signage and/or enforcement. Northern Minnesota has a decent presence of enforcement, but this could be improved and implemented statewide. Trail administrators said clubs circumnavigating the state process to do trail systems on their own without appropriate coordination with surrounding agencies. Excuse me. And cities and townships representatives said users do not know where they are allowed to ride north of Highway 2 where there is not required signage. Based on these conversations, House File 2791 helps to make sure trails are in the right places and supports the DNR and conservation officers in carrying out their duty to all of our public land users by codifying basic measures that help protect our waters and habitats as we see a continued expansion of motorized trails statewide. Having these 4 measures in statute will help to protect public lands for all recreators. We know these measures can help prevent further degradation of our forests, habitats, and waters, wild and aquatic life, so that our exceptional outdoors can be available for generations to come. Now, to give more definition to this ongoing need, I have several testifiers with me today who can give voice to the challenges and successes we hope to see in this program.
First testifier, Susan Schubert, Minnesota Public Lands Coalition.
Thank you, Chair Hansen and representatives. My name is Susan Schubert, and I'm with Minnesota Public Lands Coalition. We are a grassroots group focused on habitat and water protection, supporting common sense measures as we continue the extensive multi-million-dollar build-out of motorized sport trails throughout the state. There are currently many thousands of miles accessible to off-highway vehicles, with 700+ more club miles in progress. There are also 3 separate DNR statewide master plan systems for ATVs, off-road vehicles, and off-highway motorcycles in progress. We spoke with a number of stakeholders, including ATV Minnesota and DNR, and even though we are not in agreement, we altered some bill text in a good faith effort to reach consensus. Except for the measure of trail access to designated and posted trails, bill measures apply to future designated routes on unpaved trails only. No national forest roads or other motor vehicle roads are in the bill. No hunter exemptions are affected in any way. Although DNR and others say there is a manual with measures and also guiding principles in place, however well-intentioned, these are voluntary, not enforceable, and arbitrarily followed. The manual itself states that width or clearance zone of a trail should not be modified to reduce its ecological impact, if doing so would appreciably diminish its value to users. Grant and aid club projects need no public meetings or hearings. 2 quick examples of stated manual guidelines that are best protection strategy but often not followed are 100 minimum to 200-foot preferred buffer zones for water. The Trism Trail photo in your packet, now in progress, is being bulldozed right next to water. Wetlands in sensitive areas are to be avoided, yet a project up north was recently green-lighted that will put down boardwalk on almost 7/8 of a mile of wetlands and fill in 6 acres of wetlands. Finally, the bill has a wide breadth of coalition support, and that is further evidence that current suggested guidelines and measures are not working for public land stakeholders. Just to name a few of the bill supporters, they are the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe Natural Resources Division, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers for the Trail Access Measure, the Cook County Coalition of Lake Associations representing 18 lakes, the League of Women Voters, Audubon, Sierra Club, the Minnesota Association of Townships, Isaac Walton League, Clean Water Action, Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, the Environmental DFL Caucus, and others in your hearing file. These are also listed, some of them on the very back page of your hearing file. Thank you. Oh, and I'm going now.
That was 2.
You're finished, right? You're finished.
No, I have to read Bruce Anderson's.
Oh, you're reading Bruce Anderson's?
Yes,
Okay.
unfortunately, we have some testifiers who couldn't make it. There are also a conservation officer, other DNR people in the file. Their letters, they're very good. I recommend reading them. This is a DNR person who couldn't make it here because of the weather, unfortunately. So
Proceed.
should I go ahead?
Yes.
So this is for Bruce Anderson. Good afternoon. I'll just read his testimony. Good afternoon, Chair Hansen and committee members. My name is Bruce Anderson. I'm here in support of House File 2791. I'm a retired natural resource manager with 34 years' experience with the U.S. Service and as wildlife manager, wilderness and wild and scenic river program leader and range management specialist, and 4 years with the Minnesota DNR as wildlife manager. During these years, I've been involved with motorized recreation management in Montana, Idaho, and Minnesota. I've had considerable experience in managing both motorized and non-motorized trails. My testimony is on behalf of the Minnesota chapter of the Wildlife Society. Our primary interests revolve around motorized impacts on wildlife populations and/or wildlife habitat, and we view this bill as a means to minimize or mitigate these impacts. We want to emphasize that this legislation takes nothing away from the responsible off-road vehicle user. Legal trails now open to users would remain open. This legislation is about protecting the fragile wildlife habitat and waters, promoting easier navigation for users, and improving trail maintenance. Currently, public lands north of Highway 2, every trail without a sign or map is open. That means that illegally created trails and closed trails where signs are removed are open by default. This results in damage to fragile vegetation, impacts to sensitive wildlife populations and their environment, degrades watersheds, and contributes to a loss of solitude. Moreover, it requires considerable DNR staff time and effort to replace damaged signs and restore damaged areas. Review of scientific literature concludes that motorized recreationists can have a disproportional impact on wildlife populations and their habitat. With this legislation, actual and potential impacts to wildlife habitat can be mitigated. In addition, field staff can focus on making a high-quality off-road vehicle system instead of having to chase down illegally made trails, repair the damage, and replace signs. Working in 3 states, I've witnessed that marking trails open for motorized recreation has proven successful on national forests. Our northern forests are already fragmented with an incredible patchwork of trails. The map in your hearing packet of the designated OHV trails in the Arrowhead illustrates this. Access to designated and posted trails is in place south of Highway 2, and there is no reason why it can't be as successful on state lands. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. John Niebuhr, hydrology professor, University of Minnesota.
Greetings, Chair Hansen and committee members. I'm John Niebuhr, a professor in the Department of Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering at the University of Minnesota for 38 years. My field of specialization is hydrology, water quality, and water resources engineering. I'm here to testify to the issue of protecting surface waters from impacts of off-highway vehicles on unpaved trails in support of House File 2791. So how does off-road vehicle trafficking change the hydrology in an area? The primary effect of vehicle traffic is the disruption to the land surface by compaction of the soil. This compaction dramatically decreases infiltration capacity and increases soil erodibility. What are the potential impacts of trails on surface water quality? It is the finer grain materials, such as silt and clay, generated by surface erosion that cause issues to surface water quality. This produces well-known negative effects to spawning beds, and those fine-grained materials transport nutrients to surface water, leading to unwanted algae growth. Another impact is increasing water temperature, which is detrimental to cold water fishes. The guidelines for protecting surface water resources from these types of trails have an offset of 150 to 200, even 300 feet. When you examine the history of these guidelines, you find that they were developed over decades of careful experimentation by the U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and state and local environmental agencies. Our overall choice should be to protect the surface water resources from damage through protection of the surrounding land. One might use economics to rule against being so strict in some instances. However, I would argue that one needs to look at the economics of the whole system, the ecosystem services, and not just the special economic interest of a minority. The economics of the ecosystem services will always rule on the side of full protection. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak about House File 2791.
Thank you. Jeff Salmos, MN4WD. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee. Thank you for having us here to testify for House File 2791. My name is Jeffrey Salmos. I'm part of the Minnesota Four-Wheel Drive Association leadership. We represent 52 clubs that comprises of over 1,000 active members. I grew up wheeling with all my friends as a young kid, and the trails were nothing like they are today. They're great. My wife and I, we are avid overlanders, and we traveled about thousands of miles over the years here, experiencing all the things. We also we enjoy Jeeps and ATVs and the closed parks and trails. We oppose House File 2791. This bill will set back an already complicated and time-consuming process to create trails within Minnesota. This will make it harder for our clubs to build safe, sustainable OHV trails. Limiting the trails to be 200 to 150 feet away from water just seems difficult in the state, considering it includes culverts and bridges. There are thousands of Minnesotans that utilize these trails yearly, and there are businesses that are dependent on being patronized in these towns that are along these trails. It would be a shame to set back the fast-growing popularity of motorized sports in Minnesota. We respectfully ask that the committee finds this bill unfavorable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Karen Umfress?
Hello, committee, Chair Hansen, committee members. My name is Karen Umfress. I represent the Amateur Riders Motorcycle Association. I'm a dirt bike rider. I ride dirt bikes. I'm only a little bit vertically challenged on my dirt bike. Who does this bill impact? This, as it was already stated, that this bill impacts 70,000 ATV riders in the state. There's also 35% of all the dirt bike riders in the state are from the metro area, and as the 34% of the Minnesota Four-Wheel Drive Association members are in the metro area. There's hundreds of thousands of motorized vehicle riders in the state. There's also been, in 2023 and 2024, people from every other state in the United States that come to the trails and get a trail pass for Minnesota. This bill does have common sense pieces. That's why all of those common sense pieces are part of the 7-step process that we have to go through already. It's a very intense process. It's more intense for motorized recreation than it is for non-motorized recreation. Other people will talk more about that. The restrictions there are restrictions on water. It doesn't allow for a trail to cross a body of water on a bridge or a culvert, which doesn't make any sense to me. Also, like our dirt bike club has a trail that comes close to the water. We have a barrier that we put up that have benches, and almost every rider, anytime they ride that trail, will get off their dirt bikes and go and sit on the benches for a little rest and to view the water, because it's pretty, and we like pretty things as well. Restrictions on motorized recreation are also restrictions on people with mobility disabilities. My father and my mother both had mobility disabilities. My mother has arthritis. My father had diabetic neuropathy, but I could get them out into the woods, into nature, on a UTV, on a Class 2 ATV. So thank you very much for your time and for allowing me to testify.
Thank you. Tom Umfress.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. My name is Tom Umfress. I am also with the Amateur Riders Motorcycle Association of Minnesota. We are celebrating our 55th year of existence this year. We're also known as District 23 of the American Motorcyclist Association, which is celebrating its 100th year of existence this year. I am here to oppose House File 2791. I feel it's a bill looking for a problem that doesn't exist. I feel that all of these topics that have been discussed earlier are already addressed in the current processes. There was some inaccuracy in an earlier testimony about no need for public testimony or no requirements for that. I have a copy here of the 7-step process that we refer to as the 8-step process for a grant and aid trail program, because it has a step 0. And public comment period is in there. It's also a requirement to get permission from all landowners, road right-of-way authorities, all of that stuff to be able to get a trail in there. So I wanted to correct that. There's a number of pieces of information that we could get you if you want, but this is a DNR document on the grant and aid program. I wanted to say I feel like this is, there was some testimony about this is for protecting the environment. I look at this bill as an anti-off-highway vehicle bill, because if it was looking at protecting the environment, we'd be looking at including all trails in this process. We heard testimony about being near the waters. It's a known fact that OHVs have actual less ground compaction or pounds per square inch than humans walking, especially if you wanted to put a woman in high heels. But, and I also have examples of, like, say, bicycle trail development where they were using bulldozers, vibropackers. I was driving near one of the construction zones for a bicycle trail, and the whole road was shaking from them running the vibropacker roller there to compact that earth and, break all the water capillaries in the whole area. So I don't look at this as an environmental protection bill. I look at it as an anti-off-highway vehicle bill. I did want to correct some testimony earlier. There are 377,000 ATVs, only 70,000 in the metro area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ron Potter, ATV Association of Minnesota.
Mr. Chair, committee, my name is Ron Potter. I'm president of ATV Association of Minnesota. ATV Minnesota is opposed to this bill. We feel there's nothing in this bill that's necessary. We're trying to fix something that is not broken. Currently, counties, townships, cities, tribal governments all have control over their land, including in approval or denial of our routes across their land. In earlier bill, you heard the Prospector Trail is working with the Boys Fort Band to build a trail across their land. We're doing that. They're doing that with permission. Earlier testifier indicated the 7-step process that DNR has created involves a public comment period. Oftentimes, the sponsors that the clubs have to have also require a public process, a public comment period. And if the project moves to an EAW, there is another 30-day public comment period. So many of these projects require at least one, if not 3 different public involvement processes. One important factor that I think we need to consider is that ATV trails, especially in the northern part of the state, are built largely on public lands, county, state, DNR, U.S. Forest Service. Over 15 years ago, a lot of those lands were required to be certified to sell their forest products. Part of that certification is a monitoring program that checks to make sure their forest is being managed in a sustainable manner. That also requires the trails on those lands have to be maintained in a sustainable manner. They have audits that are done annually on their forests to ensure that they're complying with that certification. We work closely with those land managers to make sure that the trails we're building are sustainable and will in no way jeopardize their certification and their ability to sell those products. So in conclusion, I would want to reiterate that we oppose this bill. And Mr. Chair, I thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Tim Spreck, Minnesota Trappers Association. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Tim Spreck. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Minnesota Trappers Association. House File 2791 limits the use of off-road vehicles, snowmobiles, and ATVs on public lands. This is highly restrictive for hunters, fishers, berry pickers, sightseers, and especially for trappers. Trappers must access public lands for fur harvest, but also for predator, scavenger, and nuisance beaver control on behalf of local units of government. This service is critical, and without it, we would have flooding and all kinds of problems, as many of you know. The trapper is the most important and the best solution, and without access, there is a great problem with maintaining water levels and controlling nuisance beaver. For these reasons, the MTA would oppose this bill at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Simonson, Minnesota Deer Hunters Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Eric Simonson. I'm representing the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association. We are an association of approximately 20,000 members, focused primarily on hunter education and conservation. We do stand opposed to House File 2791 as amended. We have several concerns with the bill, many of which have been stated here today, so I don't want to repeat things that have already been said. I will tell you that for deer hunters, ATVs have become very commonly used. It has been a useful tool in order to get folks out into the woods that perhaps wouldn't have the ability to do that on their own. It has become a very useful tool for a lot of our youth hunters. It has become a very useful tool for hunters to be able to access deeper into the woods in order to access the game and bring them back out to the road. We would be concerned about the restrictions on access that this provides, and I want to talk just a little bit about north of Highway 2. This is an area of Minnesota that is very interlaced with trails that are used often by our members and other hunters as well. While we understand, I think the intent behind this bill is very good, and we appreciate that. We think that the overreaching restricted access that this bill would allow would be very detrimental to our members. It would be very confusing. It's hard to even understand how it might be managed or enforced. And I think our culture in deer hunting and our way of life up north would be greatly affected. We would be happy to sit down with the author or anybody else that wanted to talk about a solution that might work. But we feel like this is perhaps going a little bit too far, and we would appreciate the committee not taking this bill up going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Corey Case, Itasca County Land Commissioner. Welcome again.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for being patient with me, too. And thank you much for letting me be here today. As I was speaking, the county board opposed 2791 in 23, and I'll be speaking from the Itasca County experience. As land commissioner, we're dedicated at Itasca County to provide non-motorized and motorized opportunities in our county. The public interest in outdoor recreation has skyrocketed, especially after the pandemic, and we've seen a great increase in family use of our trail systems. The benefits of granite trails are sustainability, which are environmental, financial, and long-term maintenance, sustainability, as well as oversight and accountability. We also have a county policy that requires public notification and consultation, landowner permissions, as well as the current grant and aid procedures of environmental permitting. Our trail development can take up to 5 years. Much of this bill sets back decades of work in LGUs and states successfully establishing the current effective statewide system for sustainable OHV trails in Minnesota. The water setbacks would essentially end development of any trails in our county. Our county has 1,000 lakes, and we generally want to go from point A to B, and it's nearly impossible not to have to go near wetlands or some sort of water body. And all of the Wetland Conservation Act and all the regulations associated with that, as well as stormwater permitting, currently apply to protect waters, and we take that very seriously. Proper planning, construction, maintenance, build sustainable trails, not blanket restrictions which can't take into account all the situations on the ground. Our experience is that the key is local involvement and consensus building of our local governments. We have a dedicated position to that, and we try to work together to find these solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bob Meyer, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members, for the record, Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources, and thank you for the opportunity to address this important bill, and thank you, Representative Purcell, for bringing it forward. Just first of all, I'd like to just clarify the record. There's approximately 350,000 registered ATVs in Minnesota. If you add on off-highway motorcycles and off-road registered vehicles, it's closer to 400,000, 375,000 to 400. people that are abiding by the rules, managing this system, paying for this system, and following the system. I do want to thank the author for the amendment. It does remove some of the concerns we have, and especially the clarifications on lines 2.10 to 2.12 that says an unpaved trail does not include a trail, road, or route where motor vehicles are permitted. Some of the material that you have been handed out show pictures of forest roads, minimum maintenance roads that people are calling ATV roads or trails as well, that are legal to travel on. And this would continue that legal ability. But I think it's important to realize that ATV trails contain forest roads, they contain minimum maintenance roads, they contain access roads that may go to somebody's cabin, favorite fishing hole, or a place where they may have celebrated something important in life or remembering somebody at those spots. So we appreciate that. And I'd like to bring to light one other section of the bill in section 2 that requires local approval and mediation. This language says no portion of a state or grant-aid off-highway vehicle trail or route may be constructed, reconstructed, or improved without the prior approval of the plan by the governing body of the city, county, or township where the trail or route is located. These routes travel through many different townships, many different counties, many different locations across many different ownerships of land. So this could be a deal breaker if one section wouldn't be approved by a local township. But I'd like to ask you to think about this. Would we have a Boundary Waters canoe area if the local community had to approve that back in the day? Would we have a Voyageurs National Park if that local community was asked to approve that back in the day? What would we or wouldn't we have if we turned all this over to local units of government? With that, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the work that's been done on the bill. We do have other concerns, and we will work with the author and stakeholders on that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to testify for or against the bill? Anyone else in the audience? Welcome. State your name for the record.
Thank you, Chair Hansen and representatives. I'm Karen Graham, a homeowner in Eagles Nest Township, one of about 350 homeowners. I speak for HF 2791, which provides for local motorized vehicle recreation while recognizing the interests of people living near or on the trails. Eagles Nest is an example of the need for this legislation. A local ATV organization came in with what was called a proposed trail running through the township. What we discovered was that this proposed trail was already promoted with printed and online maps as a main route to take. The Township Board of Supervisors voted no to the trail, not just once, but twice, which shows the level of concern by the locals. The ATV organization then bypassed the township and went to the county, instead of engaging with locals to find a route that fit everyone's interests. We, Eagles Nest, are not alone. Other cities, townships, and tribal governments have had similar difficulties. This bill brings local governments and local OHV organizations together as equal partners in trail planning to avoid conflicts and elevate community input needed for successful trail design. This bill does not create a local veto. In contrast, bike trails in Minnesota are planned with public engagement. The MnDOT Bicycle Design Manual emphasizes the need for early involvement and collaboration with local governments to create good design, a trail aligned with local values and priorities. Biking is a recreational opportunity akin to OHV recreation. Designing a bike trail is an example of recognizing communities and local governments as part of the solution for success. Thank you for your interest in an issue that affects constituents in your local communities.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to testify for or against the bill? Anyone else?
Mr. Chair.
Representative Purcell.
Thank you. I would just like to make a clarification, and there was a testifier who misspoke. This bill does not apply to snowmobiles.
Thank you. Members to the bill. Representative Skraba. Then Representative Mickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Purcell. I represent both sides of this issue. I have people who really want to develop trails. I have people that don't want trails. The system we have in place now is pretty strong. I think it is. I was a trail administrator for the DNR Grant and Aid Trail. I've developed trails, I've built trails, I've moved trails for whatever reasons. I've been involved in it. And the 7-step process they talk about, it's like 15, it's not 7, 8. Yeah, I'm saying it's a lot more, trust me. There's a lot of stuff that goes into doing a trail. And the DNR does a good job of overwatching. One of the things that you bring up in your bill that I think we can all work together on, there's more than one, I'm not going to specifically say, but I think there's room for some of those issues to come out where we can work together and help the DNR put it into their rule-making process. But other than that, it's pretty strong for me right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Purcell.
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Representative Scraba. I mean, your district is very near and dear to my heart. That's where I recreate and learned my outdoor ethic, absolutely. I think I just want to reiterate, I think the point that you were just making is like, when this gets painted as like an us versus them, I just think that's a false dichotomy. And I think I am carrying this bill because I want as many people to get outside and recreate in Minnesota as possible, and we all do that in varying different ways. And so to try and make sure that everyone is able to do that in the way that they want to, and this is a newer sport versus cross-country skiing has been around since, I don't know, as long as Nordic people have existed, probably. So trying to just sort of like wrap our heads around the best way to do this for all of Minnesotans. And I love the story about the motorbiker stopping and enjoying the outdoors. Like, that's what we're doing. And if we want to be intentional about it so we don't just tear everything up, and then what's the point anyway? So I think we all have the same end goal in mind, and it's like, how do we best get there?
Representative Finke.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. Thank you, Chair Hansen and Representative Purcell for your bill. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions to make sure that I kind of understood where we are based on everything that we've heard. I think I heard at the beginning that this doesn't affect anything to do with trails that already exist. Is that accurate?
Representative Purcell.
I guess I'm not totally sure about that. I'm sure I can phone a friend and have one of the advocates come with me. Susan is back.
Ms. Schubert.
I didn't hear the question.
Is it applied to existing trails? Trails in existence?
All legal trails remain open, existing trails remain open. All legal designated map trails remain open, yes. They're not affected by the bill.
Not affected by the bill. Thank you, Chair Hansen, and for clarifying that. I also heard that there are about 400,000 such vehicles in the state of Minnesota. I also heard that this sport is rapidly becoming more popular, right? So I assume that trajectory of 400,000 is, on the upswing. I mean, just to confirm, can somebody confirm that?
Representative Purcell.
Yes, Representative Finke, I believe since 2005, it's like 175% growth in I think it's in users or maybe ownership of these types of vehicles in Minnesota.
Okay.
Representative Finke.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for confirming that, because I just want to make sure we have the stakes appropriately laid for the conversation that we have, which is that there's a lot of existing trail access. There are people who are riding ATVs, and those numbers are increasing very quickly. We have a bill that would not impact any of those existing trails. And we have a new standard that we think might be necessary to create because the popularity of the sport is not slowing. That I just can't believe how reasonable that sounds to me. When something is going from less popular to more popular, you might have to change some of the rules around developing new trails because they are going to be used by more people. I mean, isn't that what we're talking about? I just can't believe how reasonable that sounds to me. I know that everyone doesn't love that, But like, that's what we do. As things get more popular, we look at them and see what the impacts of having more vehicles would do, and then we adjust accordingly. So I thank you for this, what seems to me just a person who rides a bike in a city, seems very reasonable to me. So thank you.
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. Thank you, Representative Finke. I think the other thing that was really startling to me is that also in that time period, the average weight of the vehicle increased, I'm not a math major, but from 400 pounds to 2,000 pounds. And again, just like looking at how that might impact the trails is, again, one of those things like, oh, okay, 20 years later, let's take a step back and let's look at the broader picture.
Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. So my family really enjoys the sport, and seeing young kids especially get off of their handheld devices and get out into nature, it's very hard to find things that compete with this. So the amount, and what goes hand in hand with the sport is camping, outdoor activities, and kids learning to work on these machines. It's just endearing to see it. So and we've got 4 of these, 2 of them DNR in my district, and well, 3 of them, I guess. No, well, probably all 4 of them are DNR in my district. But so wonderful to have those. And so my concern would be, while other neighboring states, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, and we go to Wyoming, anywhere we can to enjoy nature, while other states are embracing this, cultivating the sport, and we're putting onerous restrictions on suppressing the expansion of the sport, do you have any concerns with us being less competitive with neighboring states and sending business elsewhere?
Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Jacob. I imagine the reason why you go to these other states is because they're beautiful, they're interesting, they're scenic, they're unique. And if we lose that in our biodiversity and in our ecological systems, then yeah, we won't be able to compete. And so I think that there is a balance between being able to protect the pristine nature that your family enjoys, that my family enjoys, that is part of the culture of Minnesota, and encouraging this sport. I'm glad you mentioned camping, because it's about like maybe 5-7% of Minnesotans who own an OHV, and it's 30% of Minnesotans who go to state parks. So it's not just protecting this particular group of people who have a particular interest, which is great and I support as an outdoor enthusiast, but it's everyone else's experience too. And if all of our streams look like our part of southern Minnesota with impaired waters, then we're not going to go up to Scrabba's district or Listlegard's district to recreate. We're going to go to Montana and other places where the water's pristine and where we have great ecosystems.
Representative Jacob.
Thank you. I don't want to argue with you, but I think the welcoming nature of some of these other states not having multiple bans and restrictions is inviting and could possibly even be causing people to move out of the state entirely. So, and I've had constituents tell me that. So, different perspectives from different people.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to thank all the testifiers today. I think, quite honestly, if the weather hadn't been what it is, I'm guessing it would have been standing room only in this room today. Just based on member conversation around this issue, it does appear that most of us, Representative Purcell, agree that this is a growing sport in the state of Minnesota. But I think where there appears to be an issue is when those folks that are tasked with building these systems, maintaining these systems, come to this committee today and say there's some really challenging problems with this bill and with the language that's being proposed. I'm hoping that we're all paying attention here. Because it's those folks who I think really we need to be paying attention to. They live in these places, these communities, these regions all over the state where there happens to be a resource that, like I said, we all agree is growing, the need and use of trails, but they're saying the bill is an obstacle to that. That's what I'm hearing today. I'm interested in hearing more from them in the weeks to come, and I hope that you, Representative Purcell, are also interested in hearing from them, because if this bill is an obstacle, I would hope that it doesn't go any further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Representative Heinzman, you know, we all represent 43,500 people. Adds up to about 5.4 million people. And we're supposed to represent everybody. So it's important to hear from users, and I appreciate everyone here. But we also have people who can't come here, or don't come here, or may not have a voice here. And each of us has to weigh that. I think this has been a good hearing. This is the first hearing we've had on this subject for many years. And that conversation will continue. Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Lead Heinzman. You took a little bit of the wind out of my sails. I wanted to thank everyone for being here. And I think there are lots of people in the room who are constituents who are also really in support of this, and I agree. I think there would be a lot more people here and on all sides of the aisle. There is a letter, just in your closing comments, Representative Heinzman, there are, I think, 3 letters from former DNR managers who I would argue their job was maintaining the trails, and they are saying north of Highway 3, where there's no signage, it makes their job, north of Highway 2, is incredibly difficult to manage the trails. So I do think we should listen to that and have that be the case for the entirety of the state. I'd like to thank the Public Lands Coalition. I'd like to thank all the ATV groups who came here. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for having this hearing, and thank you for this scintillating as ever conversation.
Representative Purcell renews her motion that House File 2791, as amended, be laid over for possible inclusion in a future bill. The bill is laid over.